Welcome to this webinar. Particular thanks to Elizabeth, who's going to be the presenter. One or two people still to arrive. John's just joined us, I see, from Bangor. Kath has now handed the controls over to Elizabeth. So I just want to do the introductions. So you should now be able to see the Leicester, the beautiful Leicester campus. It's a lovely day apparently in Leicester, and that's just one of the many buildings on the university. Oh, Elizabeth's removed it now. That's better. I just wanted to welcome people. I'm Rob Ward from the Centre for Recording Achievement. Particular welcome, and it's a really interesting topic, this, I think, because the Leicester Award is something that I've known about and been associated with for a while. The HERE more recently, and in a sense how to connect provision up and to, as it says on the screens, integrate the HERE with the Leicester Award. I think is a really interesting topic, and one which has some implications, I'm sure, for our colleagues elsewhere in the sector who are interested in the HERE, in awards, and maybe in the whole issue of how we recognise the range of student achievements while they're with us on programmes. You should have, in terms of housekeeping, a menu on my screen. It's on the right hand side. That will allow you to unmute your microphones, but I suggest you don't do that initially, because if you're in a shared space or you decide to type an email, we get a lot of background noise. So in a minute I'm going to mute my mic, I'm going to turn off my camera, and I'm going to hand on to Elizabeth. And what I invite you to do is to use the chat box, which if you open that that menu on the right hand side of your screen, it will give you the opportunity to add comments in the chat, which I will keep an eye on, and then we'll have some time for discussion towards the end, and that will allow people really to revisit the kind of issues that come up as we go. So please type in that space if issues come up or your questions you want to raise. And also we'll have some time when the mics are unmuted and people can raise questions as the time presents itself that have occurred to you in a more interactive way. So what I'm going to do now is to say thanks for being with us this afternoon. Particularly thanks to Elizabeth for this contribution. I'm going to shut up, turn off sound and mic, like you become a participant. But I would encourage you, as I said, to comment as we go. And with that, I'll be back with you a little bit later on. And I'm going to hand over to Elizabeth, who looks from the screen, the slide share. It looks like a really sunny, warm day in Leicester there, Elizabeth.
I wish.
Everybody in shirt sleeves, I see, which is fantastic. So we all should go to Leicester, where it's obviously subtropical. Okay, talk to you later. Thanks very much.
So thanks, Rob, for the introduction. So my name's Elizabeth Cornish. I am the Leicester Award Manager at the University of Leicester. Just kind of a little bit about me. I've been managing the award for 2 years now, and prior to that I was a project officer working on specific Leicester Award programmes. But in terms of the HERE, I've actually only been looking after this for the last year, so it's quite new to me, but I am responsible for 6.1 of the HERE and making sure that this is communicated to students and staff, and that activities are recorded on there. So just to give you a bit of an overview of what I'll cover in today's presentation, first I want to provide a bit of a background around the HERE and the history of it at Leicester, and how the Leicester Award has evolved as well, because I think this is quite important to give you an idea of why we've made the changes we have and how we've integrated the HERE with the Leicester Award. So I'll then explain the rationale for our change and the different factors that influence this, and then speak about how we actually made this change, lessons learnt, and the challenges and opportunities that we've faced as a result of kind of implementing this change. And then finally I'll close by talking about our next steps at Leicester and some tips for integrating the HERE with an award at your institution. So the Leicester story, in terms of the year, it was first conceived in 2010, and this was by Professor Robert Burgess, and he's brought this to Leicester, so that's when it first kind of got set up. In 2012 we issued the first HEAR in the summer, so upon graduation to students, and this was the first time that we had activities recognised on 6.1. In 2013 we managed to get 46 activities recorded on section 6.1, so this is quite an achievement. It was, you know, quite a lot of work to ensure that happened, but it really sort of started to kind of put the HEAR a bit more on the agenda. In 2014 we linked the Leicester Award to the HEAR, so made sure that the activities that students were participating that were recognised on the HEAR could also be recognised by the Leicester Award. And then in 2015 we now have 150 activities recorded on section 6.1 of the HEAR. In terms of the people that are involved in actually kind of making this happen, from a systems side we have IT registry, and also myself that are responsible for kind of getting that all on there and making sure that those activities are recognised. And then in terms of kind of actually ensuring approval of activities, new activities, that's careers, the Quality Office and the Students' Union look after that. So we do sort of split up the responsibility. My key role is to promote the HEAR to students, communicate with activity providers, find out about more activities that are happening around the university, and supporting activity providers to ensure that they can get that activity recognised. And then I'm also responsible for collecting all the data and making sure that this is all ready to go on the transcripts and onto the HEAR. So in terms of where we are now, as I said, there's 150 activities recognised. It is still a summative document at Leicester, so I'll kind of talk a little bit more about that later on. But what this means is it's only just given to students upon their graduation. So although they might be accumulating recognised activities as they go along, they'll only be able to access their HEAR upon graduation. We have started to develop an identifiable brand around the HEAR, and we've got a student-facing website, and we have searchable activities on our database, on our careers database. So it's starting to kind of gain more traction, and students are starting to hear about it a lot more. We also have growing support amongst colleagues and within the colleges. So for instance, we've got activities happening within archaeology and ancient history, and because those activities are recognised on the HEAR, you know, people are speaking to each other, and it's really gaining some traction within certain colleges. So this is really excellent that activity providers are starting to promote it themselves, and it's not just coming centrally from careers anymore. So that's a little bit about the HEAR. What I'm going to do now is just explain the history of the Leicester Award to give you a little bit of context around that. The main purpose of the award has always been to develop students' employability, but it's really grown over the last 10 years. So it started with the Leicester Award for Employability, which was later to be called Experience Employability. So that's kind of the box circled in red on the screen. This was set up in 2005, and it was an Institute of Leadership and Management accredited award. So when students completed it, they got a level 1 ILM certificate for that, and the real focus was on leadership, entrepreneurial skills and management skills. It consisted of about 3 intensive and interactive workshops where students worked in teams and completed a series of reflective assignments around kind of the things that they've been doing through extracurricular activities. In 2009, the award expanded quite a lot. So as you can see on the screen, there's lots of different activities on there, and it took a bit more of a franchise approach. There was a real push to kind of develop student skills and provide different activities that they could get involved in, and the Leicester Award was really a way for students to gain recognition for the things that they'd been doing. All of these different activities focused on students developing skills through experiential learning, and it was also required that they had 10 hours of contact time, so some sort of training involved in that. In terms of kind of how this model worked, it did work really well for quite a number of years, because it did offer that amount of choice for students and opportunity, but we did find that students ended up doing multiple awards, and it was actually quite an unsustainable model for us really, because there was quite a lot of duplication of assessment, which is quite costly, and there were always those kind of keen bean program leaders that wanted to get involved in things, but bringing new program leaders on board was becoming increasingly difficult just because of the commitment and the workload that they needed to give in order to make this happen. So in 2012 we started to centralise the award a little bit more, and this was following a proposal for expansion. Most of the activities were still delivered locally by programme leaders, but the majority of assignments were brought into one core unit. So as you can see in the green box on screen, students were asked to do a skills audit, a development plan, 2 blog posts and some sort of career preparation assignment. This meant that programme leaders could really focus on delivering the activity, but they were also still asked to assess a presentation and set students a career-related task as their final assignment. So, for instance, we had a sustainability award, and the final assignment was linked to a career in environmental auditing. So that was quite specific and something that needed to be assessed by an expert in that area. So it almost became like a lot more specialised. So in terms of kind of why we decided to make this change and become more central, it really kind of grew out of our strategy. So it was about focusing on unique engagement and encouraging students to really just do the award once and then hopefully get them to move on to other opportunities that we had on offer, and kind of about being more efficient in our use of resources. At this point though, we were successful in gaining some more funding, which resulted in a project officer post, which is how I came on board to the team, and we also had a number of PhD students that could mark the assessment centrally for us. So in terms of where we are now, we've changed the award again in 2014, and this has become a fully centralised award. So there's 2 levels now. At the standard level, it's really a personal skills development programme. It's linked to the HERE and also part-time work, which we don't currently recognise on the HERE, but still think is a valuable thing that we want students to be gaining recognition for. It's open to all students that are doing a hearable activity, and it really focuses on getting students to reflect on their skills development, communicating their achievements and investigating career pathways. As a follow-on from this, we thought it was important to introduce a gold award. So we wanted to split up kind of career development activities and employer-facing activities. So we introduced the Leicester Award Gold, which really focuses on identifying talent. It's quite a competitive application process, and these are employer-led programmes which really focus on developing students' commercial awareness and understanding of specific sectors. I won't concentrate too much on the Leicester Award Gold because it's really the standard level Leicester Award that is where we've integrated the HERE, although I have to say both of them are recognised on the HERE. So in terms of how this works, students can participate in one of over 50 of the accredited HERE activities, and as a result they're eligible to apply for the award. So although we do have 150 accredited activities, there's certain ones which we don't allow students to do as part of the Leicester Award because we think it's more important that they focus on experiential learning rather than a course. So for instance, we have a number of language courses that are recognised on the HERE, but this isn't something that they can choose as an activity for the Leicester Award. But the majority of things that students will be doing on campus are accredited by the Leicester Award. So students can apply during any year as long as they meet the criteria, and once they're enrolled on the course they participate in a series of e-workshops, and then they're expected to do a presentation and submit a portfolio. All of the online learning is supported by e-moderators, and then the presentations are assessed by members of the Career Development Service. So why did we make this change? I think partly it was to fit into our strategy. So we had a bit of a review of the Career Development Service and looked at all the activities that we were offering. And there are about 200 across the whole service, not just the Leicester Award, but even the Leicester Award, we ended up with about 20 programmes before this change, and it was becoming unsustainable. It didn't look as though there was any way that we could grow it further in its current model, and this is something that we did want to do. We want to expand it, reduce the costs, and really enhance the learning for students. So we wanted all students to gain the same sort of, well, achieve the same learning outcomes as a result of doing the award. And the reason I think that we brought the here in at this point is it seemed a really good point to kind of rebrand the award, but also show the difference between recognising achievement and kind of enhanced learning. So the here has really required us to adapt in a way, because this is something that we were already doing, but it wasn't linked closely enough with the award. And in many senses, I think the here is a better way of recognising that achievement. The award had sort of become this tool for recognising activity, but for some activities they just didn't fit, and it was kind of like trying to stick a square peg in a round hole, really. So the here is really, we've defined it as something, you know, that recognises activity, and then the Leicester Award can be kind of that added extra to really support students' career development further. So I suppose the here encouraged us to really think about what the Leicester Award was and rebrand it. The other great thing about it is it's encouraged students to participate in extracurricular activities. So we've got thousands of students that have something on their 6.1, but not necessarily thousands of students doing the Leicester Award. So it's really encouraged greater engagement in those activities, because students can see that they're going to get recognition for it. So for instance, volunteering is something that we've never been able to actually kind of get recognised in any other way. But now we've got about 500 volunteers that will hopefully gain recognition on the here this year, so really effective from that point of view. But we did have a volunteering award, but we could only get about 100 volunteers recognised, just because not all of them had the time to commit to something in addition to the volunteering that they were doing. So it's been really useful from that perspective, and it's sort of removed the barriers to participating in the Leicester Award, because more students feel that it's just easier to get involved. We don't have that limited capacity anymore. Anyone who's doing a here activity can do it. I think something else that the kind of, by connecting the Leicester Award and the here, it really has enhanced the profile of the here. It's made it clearer to students exactly what it is, how they can get things recognised on it, and we've been able to talk about it to students. It's given us a forum and a platform to do that, so it's really gaining traction here at Leicester now. So in terms of kind of like how we made this happen, it was quite, you know, a long process. Obviously, as you can see, when we implemented the here in 2010, but it's taken quite a while to kind of get it going. Obviously, there's a lot of, you know, systems and things behind that, but now that we have, you know, it's had some really positive outcomes. But actually getting the Leicester Award and integrating that with the here took a time in itself. So what I did is I visited other universities to find out what they were doing. I thought this was quite important to start with, to give us a bit of an idea of exactly how we should be going about doing that. And then consulted the programme leaders that I was working with, and we also had a Leicester Award Management Board, so consulted them to get their opinions on how this might work and gain their buy-in. I also consulted with the CRA, and that was really useful to gain a wider perspective and really just consultation on how that might work. I think the key thing that I really had to do was come up with a list of benefits that would appeal to the stakeholders. For us, the Leicester Award had been running in a similar format for quite a long time, and programme leaders had quite a lot of control over what was delivered, so making a change like this was something that they really needed to be on board with, and I wanted them to be involved with. So that was really important, that I sold the benefits of the here and exactly kind of how this change would benefit students. Sorry, my lights go off in this room. The other thing that we did was we increased the number of activities that were recognised on the here, and this was quite important because in order for it to sort of develop further, we needed more activities that students could get involved with that would then be recognised. So this essentially just meant going out to activity providers that we knew of that hadn't actually necessarily had the opportunity to kind of gain recognition before. For some activity providers, they might have approached us previously to try and create a Leicester Award, but it didn't necessarily fit into the structure of the Leicester Award, whereas it was kind of a perfect activity to get recognised on the here. So we've expanded the number of activities there. The other thing that was really important was developing a communication strategy for students and staff so that they could really understand it, especially the difference between the Leicester Award and the here. This did take like a couple of months to get it right, really. So what we did is we started with the visual side and giving it a real identity. So as you can see on the screen, we've got a couple of badges. So anything that's a here recognised activity, that goes on their website and any promotional material, and the same with the Leicester Award activities as well. So we redesigned all of this all at once, and then we had to think about really where to house a list of these activities, how would students access information about them, how would they present the difference between the here and the Leicester Award. And I think the hardest thing was really encouraging people to change their language after 10 years of talking about getting things recognised through the Leicester Award, whereas now I was trying to get people to say that they would get it recognised through the here. This is something that we're still working on, because obviously it depends on how strong the brand of your award is, but I think the message is really starting to get out there now. In terms of how we actually communicated things to staff and students, so for staff we ran a session at Teaching and Learning Week to explain what the here was. We've also talked to academic college committees, promoted it through course reps, which has been useful. For students, we had a stand at our Festival of Careers, so we were getting students to tell us what types of activities that they were doing and telling them how they could get these recognised on the here. We also had banners created, we had promotional material and information on the website, and obviously any volunteering sessions we've run and Leicester Award sessions, we've promoted it through that. The activity providers as well were really useful in promoting the here. So we've asked them to put the badges on their Blackboard sites and websites and things, and what we did is created a communications pack and sent that out to them so that they had a bit of guidance on exactly how to do that. And I think through this quite grassroots approach, we are starting to see a demand in the here. We get more questions from students about how they can get things recognised, and we're also starting to see employers and charities that we work with, so maybe voluntary organisations, asking whether they can students will be able to get things that they're doing recognised on the HEAR. So it's really working. I think we do need to present our results. So obviously this is like the first year that we've had this change, so we won't know until the end of the year how many students have gained recognition, but we should know this by June. So I'm really hoping that the enhanced communication will increase the numbers of students getting recognition on the HEAR. In terms of kind of lessons learned around this, I think don't underestimate the time it takes to get all systems and communications in place, because this is something that did take us you know, a couple of months to figure out in the summer, and especially because we were changing both the Leicester Award and trying to introduce the HEAR at the same time. So it was really kind of trying to communicate the difference and understanding, and I would really say just don't assume that people understand the difference, because I mean, I work on the Leicester Award every day, so I'm quite clear of how the two things are different. But I think that's something that I'm still working on with people that, you know, that it's all new to them. So that's like a tip I would say, really, just make sure the communications are as clear as possible. So in terms of kind of like challenges that we were facing, I think I mentioned at the beginning that we only have a summative HEAR at Leicester. So one of the biggest challenges is that we don't have a formative HEAR. So this means that really we didn't want to over promote it, because we knew that students wouldn't be able to access it until they graduated. So we've had to be quite clear in our communication about when they can access it. But then that makes it quite important to sell the benefits as well on why they should be getting involved in these activities, because they don't necessarily see the return on investment straight away. We don't have any dedicated resource for the HEAR, so we've had to fit it in with our day jobs and had to work with current systems and the budget that we've got. So it's really kind of been, that has been quite a challenge, I think, fitting that in and promoting the activities and providing information on completion criteria, using the systems that we've got, because we've had to make use of, for instance, our employer jobs board to promote the activities. But I think kind of going forward, this will be something that we develop and work on. In terms of kind of the understanding around the HEAR, obviously I've already mentioned it, the HEAR wasn't widely understood by our staff or students, so we really needed to provide a bit more information around that to contextualise it. And communicating the difference between the HEAR and the Leicester Award is a real challenge. Another thing that isn't on the slide, but is that we can't offer it to all of our students. So we can offer it to the majority of our undergraduates, but there are certain students that don't get it. So for instance, medical students, and this is something that we've had to be quite aware of and make sort of allowances for them to participate in the Leicester Award by doing different activities, and just trying to make it clear that although they don't necessarily get it recognised at the moment in time, we are working towards doing that in the future. So there have been some really great opportunities as a result of kind of integrating the HEAR and the Leicester Award together. So we've had obvious interest from students that this is something that they want and that they value, and I think the grassroots promotion of the activity is really making a lot more noise on campus about the HEAR, so it's a word that's being bandied around a lot more, and it's nice to see in the last couple of months the Students' Union have got a lot more involved in this, and they're wanting to develop their promotion of the HEAR as well. I think what's excellent about it is that it's an easy stepping stone into the award. So if students are doing a HEAR activity, it's a lot easier for them to want to get involved in the Leicester Award, and it kind of cuts down that barrier that there maybe was in place before. And I think, you know, as time goes on, we'll just see more and more people getting involved as a result of that. The other thing is there's a greater number of students gaining recognition. So as I said previously, volunteering wasn't formally recognised except through the Leicester Award, and now there's loads of students doing volunteering that will be able to get recognised on the HEAR. And I think what's nice about this is if a student's doing the Leicester Award, then they're doing their activity, they're obviously getting an absolutely excellent experience out of that. But for those students that actually just don't have the time to commit to it, or they're already doing, they're going that extra mile by doing an activity and don't feel it's necessary to kind of do the Leicester Award on top of that, they can still gain that recognition, and that wasn't there before. They kind of had to take on quite a lot of work, and I think from my perspective, it's nice that they can get that recognised, even if they haven't committed to kind of a 6-month intensive programme. So our visions for the future, I think the formative HEAR is incredibly important because it allows students to review their achievement periodically, and at the moment I think what we're doing with the Leicester Award is kind of trying to fill that gap a little bit, and what we'd really like to do is integrate a formative HEAR with an e-portfolio system, potentially with the personal tutor system, so that students can really use it in a way that will allow them to develop themselves, and then this would feed probably a lot further into the Leicester Award as well, and we can make more use of that document. Obviously this requires enhanced systems and procedures to be put in place, and a real review of our student records system and databases that we have available, but this is something that we're looking at the moment. We also still need to refine our communications. What we've done so far has been excellent and we've achieved a lot within the year, but I think there's still more work that can be done, and I think the longer the HEAR is around, then the easier it's going to be to communicate it. And in addition to this, I think further collaboration with the Students' Union is something that's definitely on our agenda. The more that they can promote it to students, then the more students are going to take it up. They've got thousands of course reps and students doing like leadership positions within student societies. So that's a real point that we need to kind of, a resource that we need to make more use of and promote it a lot more through them. So to kind of wrap things up, just some top tips. Obviously, well, it sounds quite obvious, but know why you're doing it, what are the benefits of integrating the HEAR with your award, and just making sure everyone else understands your vision. This is really important. And then gain buy-in from those people. Make sure that you have an idea of what the students want and who you're going to be able to offer it to, your activity providers, the senior management team. And something that I think is really important is to get a senior sponsor or steering group to drive that change if you can do. This is something that we've started to develop a little bit more this year, but we didn't necessarily have prior to that. Ensure the communications are clear and communicate the benefits. I can't say more about how important it is to communicate it clearly. And then I think figure out the specifics. This is something that, again, sounds quite obvious, but it's about determining how activities will feed into the award. How is it going to be structured? What activities will you allow students to use as credit for your award, and are there any that just don't work? So for instance, do the timescales just not fit? Here at Leicester we record activity on kind of a yearly basis, so students have to complete it within a certain time frame. If it goes over that, it makes it very difficult for us to credit it as a part of the Leicester Award. And then really just thinking how you'll bring the two together. So for us, the HEAR is kind of student experience part of the award, and the Leicester Award is the career development side of things. So we kind of split it up between experience and teaching, but it might be different for an award at your institution. So that's kind of the end of my presentation, but I'm really happy to take any questions Rob, I don't know if there's any that came up during.
Sorry, yes, there's quite a few, and I'm torn a bit. Maybe we can start off, but I think people can unmute their own mics. If you are going to do that, so we can have a conversation across the airwaves, please don't type, and please be aware if you're in a shared space, because for some reason it really sounds. There are several areas we might want to pick up on, colleagues. Thank you for your questions in the chat, and I think in a sense some of the other questions might have been handled, but perhaps we should just reprise them. There are a number of questions, Elizabeth, as you went along, about the precise relationship between the award and the here. And particularly whether, for example, here activities can get you credit towards the award is one kind of question, and how the 150 activities, do they connect to the award? What are they? Is one kind of area. You might want to give us a flavour of just that 150 activities in section 6. So do you just want to kind of reprise that quite briefly, because you did deal with it towards the end? Perhaps in terms of if you were speaking to students or staff colleagues, how would you differentiate or connect between section 6, between the Leicester Award and maybe the Leicester Gold Award, because there are those three kinds of elements that you're working with. And I think that would cover a number of areas that people just wanted a bit more clarity on.
Yeah, so in terms of how I explain it to people, I talk about the here is the way of recognising a student's activity, and the Leicester Award is the kind of added extra that they can participate in, which supports their career development further. Obviously, because we have a summative here, it really is at the moment just a form of recognising their achievement because they can't access it. So the Leicester Award is really the chance for them to reflect on the things that they're doing and gain that careers perspective on how they might articulate the skills that they're gaining through the activities that are recognised on the here.
Okay.
In respect of the activities that we have on there, so we've got student ambassadors, union council, course reps, volunteering. We've got all of our Leicester Award Gold programmes are recognised on the here. We've got, there's quite a lot of different activities from the Students' Union, so kind of sports reps, college reps, all that sort of thing. We also have languages at Leicester, so we have about, I think, 90 courses that are recognised for our Languages at Leicester programme, which is excellent because in the past those students have only got certificates for that, whereas now they can gain that formal recognition on the here.
Okay.
Does that answer all those questions?
I think if colleagues want to either write or unmute, there's that certainly gives the context. It might raise some other questions, of course. Do you want to just say, there's a question that's just come up, and I'm trying to manage the early ones and the later ones, but Lucy's just asked about current numbers and whether the here element and increasing the activities there has impacted on the award.
This year we haven't seen an impact yet, but
okay.
I think that is largely due to the fact that we changed the whole award, so that takes time to kind of gain traction. So I think the real indicator will be next year when we see an increase in numbers on the award.
So a bit early to know.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. There was a bit of a debate that colleagues were having, and people may want to come in on this. There are a number of questions around who gets the here and why they get it and so on. There are a number of questions about the formative area, both of which we should come back to. But I think there was a debate about how people felt about the different levels, or the fact there were two awards, and they may not be level, but as I understand it, Elizabeth, they've got a kind of different emphasis. So, in a sense, all of your three areas have got a different emphasis in terms of what they offer to students. I'll shut up. You tell us.
Well, so the standard level award focuses on personal development and really getting students to understand the skills that they've developed and how to articulate these effectively. So it kind of focuses on, you know, personal development and lifelong learning skills, getting them to action plan and that side of things. Whereas the Gold Award is really employer focused. So what we were doing in the past was we were sort of combining employer engagement with our regular award programs, and some students were really not at the point where they were confident enough to be put in front of employers, and it was really about managing expectations, because we had some students that would sign up and expect to be offered a job as a result of the fact that there was an employer involved in the program, but they hadn't really kind of developed those initial skills that they needed to be able to kind of really succeed in front of them at that point. So what we've essentially done is just split up the two awards so that the expectations are managed a lot better, and it seems to have worked really, really well. Employers like it, students like it. We were running a program yesterday with Deutsche Bank, and the students just thought it was excellent because it's delivered by the employers, but they also have, you know, they've got a grasp of their career management by the time they're in front of these employers, so they can really make the most of the opportunity, and obviously the employers are going to get more out of it as well. So it's been a really positive addition, I think, to our award.
Okay, thank you. So do people need to do the award as a prerequisite of the Gold Award?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
So it's only open to students that have done the standard level Leicester Award, and
Okay.
that is kind of a bit of a carrot really to get them to go on and do the Gold Award.
Okay, fantastic. There's a strand which again people might want to talk to or add to in the chat about student opinion of the HERE, and there's at least 3 dimensions to that in the chat. There's a note from James about a concern, I guess, that students see this as another box to tick. There's some follow-up from William at Manchester about, but maybe that's where students start, but perhaps it's not where they finish, because they develop as they go, and John at Bangor is raising the issue about how we clarify the developmental potential of the HERE, and I think that also touches on the challenge you've got with not having a formative HERE. So I mean, do you want to say anything about, you know, the box ticking anxiety, or how, I mean, you mentioned how you're publicising the HERE and how getting staff and students involved. What are the key messages? What are the key benefits you're trying to sell, I suppose? How are you trying to get students to see it more than another thing the university tries to make them do, which is, I guess, the risk in James's thought?
I think I don't ever see it as a box ticking exercise, because actually the students have to do relatively little to physically, in terms of actually knowing that they're going to get recognition. They don't actually have to do an awful lot. So although they might have to do things through their activities, so we do have completion criteria, this is sort of built into the things that they're doing already. So a lot of the time they might, you know, it's not like they have to do anything additional to the activity. It's just making sure that that recognition is gained. So, for instance, course reps, I think they have to do, they have to go to about 3 committee meetings, course rep training, and then kind of provide a bit of feedback at the end of their year as a course rep. And they have to be voted into that position. But those are all things that they'd have to do anyway as a course rep. So it's not like they're doing anything extra for the HERE. So I don't think it's a box ticking exercise, and I really don't think they see it that way. I think they just see it as the rightful recognition they should be getting for doing those activities they want to be involved in the first place. I think for some students, obviously, having that recognition at the end of it is a motivator. So, for instance, for volunteering, we ask that they do 25 hours of volunteering. Some students might only do 15, but if they know that they only need to do 10 more hours to gain recognition for it, then that's going to encourage them to do that. So, and then, can you remind me of the other question, Rob?
I mean, I think they were largely in that territory. I think the other dimension was how students are encouraged and supported by staff or by the key messages in the publicity. What I hear you saying there, and I hope it's helpful to colleagues, is that sense that this is things that students are going to do, hopefully would want to do anyway, of their own volition, which the university is recognising, and that kind of bears on a really nice question from Paul that she's just asked, which is this perceived by students, by staff, as being relevant to the mainstream purpose for which students are at university, or as an added extra that even might be seen as a distraction? And he says that's important if we're looking to engage personal tutors, which is something he'd like to do at UCL. So is there any sense in terms of, I guess there'll be a range of student reactions and a range of staff reactions, but the sense I had from what you were saying is that this is becoming more part of mainstream awareness and maybe mainstream thinking in terms of it being part of and relevant to why people are at university.
Yeah, obviously we tell students right from day one that their degree on its own will not be enough, so they really do need to get involved in additional activities. I think there's always different opinions around this, and I mean, not all academic staff agree with the idea of students doing additional things outside of their studies, but I think the majority definitely think it's a good thing, and we've got a number of academic staff that actually run activities themselves. So we've got a lot of outreach activities that go on. I think I mentioned earlier, within the School of Archaeology and Ancient History, they run an activity which is about teaching children in schools about archaeology and ancient history. So they have volunteers that go out and do things like that, and they get training. So I think it does depend on the different departments, but the majority of staff at Leicester are very supportive of the Leicester Award and of the here as well. It's just kind of bringing more people into that. We do a lot of work through the career service in the first couple of weeks of term, so making sure that we go into all degree disciplines and tell them about the opportunities that we have on offer, and the here is one of those things, especially with first years, because we want to make sure that they develop themselves as much as possible, and there's just so many things that they can get involved in, and this really helps to promote those activities further.
Okay, thanks. I mean, there's been a strand which has been asking whether there could be an anonymised here, just to have a look at how the award and the activities feature and what sort of things are there. And James has picked up that there is something on the Leicester site, but I'm not sure whether that's from the reference he's got, whether that is an anonymised version. But people, I think, would like just to see how it might look. Is that feasible at all?
Yeah, there is actually one on our website.
Okay, so maybe that's what James has found then.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's something that we put up there because, again, because students can't see it before they graduate, we wanted to give them an idea of exactly what it will look like towards the end of that. So yeah, you can find that on our website to download.
Fantastic. Okay, that's great. One or two people were asking Elizabeth about why the medics don't get it and how far it extends in terms of postgraduate students and maybe also part-time students at the minute, and whether you've got any plans in that. And I know because medical education has got a particular career in mind and it's structured in particular ways, then that's not been an area which a lot of institutions have got the here running for. But do you want to say anything about the Leicester context?
Yeah, so
we are recording the time, but we are recording this, but we can always take it out if it's deeply inappropriate for you to say.
Okay. The real reason behind why we don't offer it to certain degree disciplines and postgraduate students is because it's down to systems. We have different student record systems, and it's just quite complicated in actually making that happen. And that's another reason why we haven't yet developed a formative here, because it's something that we're still trying to figure out. So, and I have to say we are doing work on that at the moment, because that's something that we would like to move forward. I think it just takes time, and in terms of kind of as an institution, there's lots of things with the student record system that need have priority over this at the moment. So we're trying to really make it work in its current format with the long-term view of taking it forward and making it formative here and offering it hopefully to well, the medical school as well as postgraduate students.
Okay, thank you. A couple of other bits. I mean, Lucy's got a range of questions, and I'm wondering, which were asked some time ago, but I still think they're important. I'm just going to try and go back to them, if I can. Okay. Sorry, you have to bear with me a little. We've got loads of stuff in here. Lucy, do you want to unmute your mic and talk about the questions you were asking? You may not want to, in which case just send me a note to say that it's the 1 o'clock chat statement about the different protocols and the role of the activity providers and so on, and how the descriptions for the here get written. Do you want to say anything about that if you're still...
Yeah, the question is because we're...
Lucy, can you shout a little bit? Your sound isn't great.
Sorry, is that better?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so we are just at the stage where we're starting to think about opening up the here to include other activities on it. So what I was interested was what are the kind of processes and protocols that you use to validate the activities? But I think you kind of touched upon that when you said that a lot of the activities already have kind of criteria for them anyway, so student reps have to go to 3 committee meetings and attend training. But I was wondering who was responsible for actually validating them? Is it the activity providers themselves?
Yeah, so the way it works is any new activities that we take on, they have to fill in an application form and state what the criteria is that students have to achieve in order for it to be recognised. And then the activity leaders verify that activity that students do. So if they have to go to a training session, do so many hours, they'll verify all of that and then just inform us of who has completed their activity. And those applications are reviewed by myself, a member of the Quality Office, and someone from the Students' Union. So we look at those applications that come through, and if they do meet our criteria, then we accept them. If not, we'll go back and see if there's anything we can do to kind of make sure that they've got enough in there, or in some cases where it might be something like part-time work, we can't accept those.
Right. Okay, but you accept that on your award though, don't you, part-time work?
Yeah, we do accept part-time work, but it's not something recognised on the here, so it's like an additional thing that students could do to participate.
Right, thanks. Yeah, that's all I needed to know. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Lucy. There's a strand of questions around, I suppose, the cost and the degree to which validation can be automated. And I guess that's from James, particularly thinking about taking out the face-to-face interaction, which is an issue for his institution. So I don't know how feasible that is, but I certainly, as I remember it, there was for the award, certainly there's a core which does need to be reviewed by a person. There aren't sort of automatic ways of confirming achievement in that sense. But for the here, is there anything that can be done in an automated way, Elizabeth, or is it still very much reliant on the individuals?
At the moment, it's very much reliant on the individual activity leaders verifying that activity. But I know that other institutions have got kind of maybe sort of more advanced systems in place to actually verify that activity, and we're still working on that. But in terms of the question about the award, was there a question about kind of how that could be delivered kind of online? Seem to have lost Rob now.
It might have been. Yeah, no, you haven't done here. I'm just scrolling up and down the chat because it's not Do you want to say something about that while I'm looking for the question, on the basis you might answer it by whatever
I
you want
guess
to say?
just to clarify the award, a lot of it is delivered online, and it is possible to deliver the entire award online. We actually have about 200 distance learners that participate, so that is possible, but it doesn't come without a cost. You know, we do have to have people that mark the assignments and verify that students have completed all of their activities. I think there's ways of doing it depending on how you want to assess them that you know, you could be like manageable. But I thought it was quite important that students do both the presentation and a portfolio as part of our award.
Okay, thanks very much. Elizabeth. Colleagues, I'm not sure that I've done justice to the range of questions that you have. So Kath's just put in the chat box, you can unmute your microphone if you want to ask a question before we finish. The reason I say that is we've got about 3 minutes left, and people I know will start to need to go to other things. So we'll just take a moment or so. You can click on the microphone if you want to. The worst thing would be to go away thinking, I really wanted that question answered and it didn't get answered, or at least aired. And I'm conscious in the richness we've probably missed one or two key things out. We will confirm the Leicester example, and having unmuted everybody's mic, you'll now hear all sorts of sounds on the system. But we'll just invite people just to add anything they want to at this point.
Hi, Rob.
Hi.
John from Bangor.
Hi, John.
Hi, I just wanted to check your way of recognising here activity and the Leicester Award itself. Do you use the same mechanism? You may have answered this already, but do you use the same mechanism to record both types of things?
Yeah, so essentially the Leicester Award is a here activity in itself, so we record all of that information in the same way, because it's a little bit strange, I suppose, because at Leicester we look after all of the data for all of the here activities, so they all come to us anyway, and then we kind of sort through all that data and make sure it's all in the right format. But something that we do have to do as part of the Leicester Order, so students have to complete a here activity in order to actually gain their Leicester Award. So even though they might do all the portfolio and everything, if they haven't actually got a here activity, then we won't be able to give them the award. So we have to kind of cross-check all of our completion data with the here completion data as well.
Thank you. It's very similar to what we're doing in Bangor, so it's good to hear that. Thank you.
Okay.
There's a school of thought that says really we just ought to provide a bit of time for people to talk to one another. Ryan has appeared on screen and gone again. Okay, any final questions? Paul, I just want to check that you got a sense of the questions that you were asking about how things related together, if you want to come back on that.
Not especially. I think, I don't know, I was halfway inclined to think maybe of coming up and seeing the whole thing in action at some time, because I think you get a certain feel from the descriptions, but it's how the students experience it and how they integrate it with their sense of what they're at university for and how the academic staff regard it. You know, to a degree, employability issues are marginalised in some universities. These are quite complex.
I think I lost you at the end of that, but just to sort of answer your question, I'd be happy for you to come and visit. Yeah, it'd be great to speak to you more about those things, and yeah, happy for you to kind of come and see what we do here at Leicester. I think I'm obviously quite aware that we, you know, as a service, and as an institution, careers is quite high on our agenda, and something that I mean, we run an employability summit every year, so something that people are quite bought into. That doesn't mean that we don't still have work to do, but I know that not all institutions, that might not be kind of the driving force or kind of the main thing.
Yeah, thanks very much, Elizabeth. And Paul, I mean, yeah, it sounds like that invite can be firmed up later on. I just want to add 2 points which might or might not relate to that, which is the sense that a lot of the original award work started with staff in departments that wanted to engage students in doing useful things that were subject related. And you mentioned the archaeology and ancient history illustration earlier, which is kind of employability by the back door almost. It's developing some capabilities in working in new environments that that might be very useful when it comes to employability, but students may not do it for that reason. So that's an interesting kind of notion, which is a strength of how the award started out, I think, in terms of how you're able to use it now.
Yeah, definitely.
Fantastic. Okay, I'm going to recognise that normally my skills of time management are rubbish, and there's a danger that we'll spend another hour and you'll be really wanting to go. Those haven't already. So rather than death by 1,000 people leaving, I just want to thank Elizabeth, thank all of you for a really interesting hour, which has raised a lot of issues, which has started a lot of discussions. And on the basis that Paul has been welcomed into Leicester, I'm sure other colleagues would be as well, and we can run a trip. It's an hour or so from London, and then just up the hill and turn right, and the university is in front of you. So thank you very much, Elizabeth. Really appreciate it. Lots of feedback, as you're now seeing on the in the chat window. We'll make the recording available and the slides available, and you can come back and review the bits you missed when you have a spare hour. Ho ho. Okay, thank you, Elizabeth.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Rob.
everyone. Talk to you soon, I'm sure, and we'll let you know when the recording's available. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.